As has been mentioned, we discussed the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The politics of trade are always difficult in every country. I don't know any country where there aren't going to be some folks who argue against trade. But we all believe that in an integrated global economy, the goal is not for us to try to shut ourselves off from the world, but rather to work together to raise standards around the world for workers and for the environment. And that's exactly what TPP does. It's the right thing to do, and we're going to keep working for it. Given the flood of steel and aluminum on global markets, however, it points to the fact that free trade also has to be fair trade. And our three countries agreed to work together on a range of trade measures to enforce our rights and protect our workers and ensure a level playing field for the steel and aluminum industries here in North America. And given the vote of the United Kingdom to leave the European Union, our economic teams are going to continue to work together so that we remain focused on keeping our economies growing and making sure that the global financial system is stable, something I'm confident that we can do. It is my firm belief that making sure that how we trade, how we exchange goods, it is my firm belief that shaping those in accordance with the values that our three countries care deeply about is going to be good for us. And us trying to abandon the field and pull up the drawbridge around us is going to be bad for us. Now, with respect to Brexit, I think it's important to point out that those who argued about leaving the European Union are the same folks who the very next day are insisting, don't worry, we're still going to have access to the single market. So apparently their argument was not against trade generally, they just didn't want any obligations to go with the access to the free market. And it's important for us not to draw easy analogies between what happened in the UK and the EU versus what's happening between our three countries in terms of trade, or what's happening in terms of us attempting to access Asian markets through TPP. That's point number one. Point number two. Ordinary people who have concerns about trade have a legitimate gripe about globalization. Because the fact is that as the global economy is integrated, what we've seen are trend lines across the advanced economies of growing inequality and stagnant wages, and a smaller and smaller share of overall productivity and growth going to workers, and a larger portion going to the top 1%. And that's a real problem, because if that continues, the social cohesion and political consensus needed for liberal market economies starts breaking down. So they're right to be concerned about that. I'm concerned about it, Justin's concerned about it, and Enrique is concerned about it. The question is, what do you do about it? And the prescription of withdrawing from trade deals and focusing solely on your local market, that's the wrong medicine. First of all, because it's not feasible, because our auto plants, for example, would shut down if we didn't have access to some parts in other parts of the world. So we'd lose jobs, and the amount of disruption that would be involved would be enormous. Secondly, we'd become less efficient. Costs of our goods in our own countries would become much more expensive. And this nostalgia about an era when everybody was working in manufacturing jobs and you didn't need a college degree and you could go in, and as long as you worked hard, you could support a family and live a middle-class life. That has been undermined far more by automation than it has been by outsourcing or the shift of jobs to low-income or low-wage countries. I mean, the steel industry is producing as much steel in the United States as it ever was. It's just it needs 1/10 of the workers that it used to. And this is why my pushback on both the left and the right when it comes to protectionism or anti-trade arguments is you are right to be concerned about the trends, but what you're prescribing will not work. And there's a better way of doing this. And the better way of doing it is countries like ours that have high labor standards and high environmental standards and strong protection of intellectual property and rule of law, we've got to get out there and help to shape those rules so that they work for our workers and our businesses. Because if we don't, China will write the rules, and they may not have the same regard for the values that we care about. Other countries will write the rules in ways that disadvantage our workers and our businesses. In Asia right now, there are a whole lot of tariffs that keep our products out, but because we happen to be some of the most open nations in the world, they're selling our stuff in. So we can't disengage, we got to engage more. And if we combine that with investments in education and tax policies that are fair and making sure that college is affordable and we're strengthening the safety net and we're rebuilding our infrastructure, which are jobs that cannot be exported, and we're making investments in research and development, and we're building an inclusive society in which everybody's got a fair shot. That's how we're going to solve these problems. And what is absolutely true is that too many folks who've been in charge around the world have neglected that side of the equation. So we're going to keep on pushing hard to shape an international order that works for our people. But we're not going to be able to do that by cutting off trade, because that's going to make all of us poor.